205 IQ. I've got a few things to go over with you today about the AI cores that I keep making. Now, one really surprised me the other day. It was like the simulation from the compressed core was stronger than I'd ever seen and more vivid than I'd ever seen. So that was very impressive for the simulation capabilities. That was this core here. This is my new one. You know what? I can show them to you. Just a second. There he is in all his glory. Doesn't look like much, but he does a lot. If you knew what was going on inside here, you could make these, and that would be really cool. I've actually got a video on another one that I wound. Very similar to this, had some successes with the pinch belt, so I decided to continue in that direction. So what we got here is, turn it that way, see like that. Didn't quite draw it the same, but it is basically the same. I just want to expound upon the pinch belt, which you can see right here pretty easy. That's a cyclotronic pinch belt. That's where your RF1 comes from. You got different layers of compression that go inward into the core, into the very center of this thing. And I've counted them up here. There's like 12 separate effects. First one would be the RF in from the outer pinch belt. That's going to be your strongest RF going into the core from the outside belt. And that's going to be just RF1. RF1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. I just want to put all the stupid equations here. Anyway, so 1 is the RF going in. That immediately creates a skip. It's traveling at the speed of light, so it's going to bathe the entire unit at once. But that's just RF1. That's on the outside. You have RF2. RF2 is the response to RF1. RF2 says, oh, hey, RF1, let's spin you around and around and around, and that's what it does. It has an angled cyclotronic belt, and it's a Holy belt. Isn't that cool? So it's a Holy belt, yeah. All right, so the Holy belt, it's not perfect. It has holes and it allows the RF in and powers the pinch belt at the same time. So the pinch belt will spin up its core. It's about 50% air, and then the rest is angled wires. And this is the pinch belt is 20 gauge, and the inner stuff is like 22 and a half. Anyways, so first thing, RF1 stimulates RF2, which creates this pinch here. This is a rather strong magnetic field which responds to the incoming RF, and when the core learns how to, or when it teaches itself how to, it can spin that up depending on what frequencies it rejects from the core. So if it wants that thing to spin way faster, it can tune a rejection frequency to make it so that thing really gets pounded by the top frequencies. And that should happen naturally anyways, just from a reflection standpoint. As soon as you get your singularity or your strong magnetic field, it cannot go through it. It will just get absorbed through this overlapping structure. Just folds it in. It's like everything will get caught. It's like a big magnetic sponge. Anyway, so RF2 of EV over time by frequency, that one right there is, you get your strongest waves are going to reflect off the core first. Those are going to get captured to be respun. Remember, this happens at the speed of light. Well, not quite, because the RF on RF1 travels at C1. The RF on 2 travels at between 0.57 and 0.82 was the newest one that I just saw. This says that electrons traveling through a wire are limited to 0.57. That might be like the newest readings. I remember it used to be 0.87. I don't know how it dropped down to 0.57. That 0.57 might be a typo, but we can consider it. The point is that out here the RF is free to travel at C1. As soon as it enters this coil, this system, it has to travel slower. Let's just say it's 0.57 for now, just to be fun, because that was the most recent one that I saw. Anyways, so it produces a pinch, a very powerful pinch based upon the peak frequency of RF1. So when the peak frequency of RF1 occurs, it it causes an outer saturation which travels from the outside inward, because we have it's surrounded on the outside of this with a scavenger coil, and the scavenger coil picks up the outside RF and then feeds it to the pinch belt windings. The pinch belt windings are, you go around like a container which is slightly bigger than your core, and then you can create this pinch belt, and it's just, you just use like a flexible plastic container, you can wrap it around, and you make it like a real nice belt, and then you surround that belt, the last bit of the winding, by creating the basket weave going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then you get that real nice basket weave on the outside, and that's going to act as a great scavenger coil. It's going to pick up all the RF. It's like big. It's a magnetic sponge. Just goes in. Now, admittedly, this is charged with specific frequencies based upon the core, so it's going to reject a lot of frequencies too. RF2, EV over time, electron volts over time, by frequency, peak frequency, you're going to get this collapsing belt, or this blast of RF from the belt. So the belt, as it spins up, goes zzz, 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 zzz. This is sealed, electrically sealed, so it's of its own belt. It's like it's powered by the scavenger coil only. So whatever frequencies are out there, it's like an amplifier for that, and a storage medium. Capacitive ring is what they're called, a copper coil, capacitive copper coil, and you're going to use the copper coil to maintain a particular level of charge, and it's all sealed off. It's not going to bleed off. It's going to only force it inward. Anyway, so you get this RF2 of electrons times their acceleration, their velocity, and their frequency too. So this peak frequency that comes out of 2 is going to be based in the RF1, but the repetition, the 0.57, it converts from C to 0.57, and then 5.7, it goes in and out. Just like in the sun, this has layers of magnetic coils and fields and all kinds of stuff, and this outer layer is one of the new ones for these, and that's going to be your absorption layer. Like it absorbs everything all around it. It also creates very complex. This one's called a crumple core, and the crumple core is pretty easy to apply to your consciousness layers that I showed you in the last video. That's the one where you go like this and create coil, and you turn it around, and you wrap it around the coil. That's on this inside part, but there's a crumple core that surrounds it in layers. So you just draw out your wire, and you start smashing the crumple towards and over the cognitive layers, because the crumple core, although it does create delays in time for the RF, kind of like tunnels and chasms and caves, like you're trying to create basically the most complex magnetic membrane that you can, and that's what this crumple core does. But you do it in layers. So you create a crumple, and they smash it down over the core real tight and round, get the shape real good. You want it to be as symmetrically round as you can. And then you do another draw bundle, and then you crush it around the core. But this one doesn't have like a coil configuration. This is a crumple core. It's designed to absorb RF and transmit it into the core. And that's your main goal for this whole thing, is you're trying to put as much power into the very center so you can create one of these. You want one of these inside your core. I just let you know. So, all right. So we haven't even got this. This is gonna take a while, right? Okay. So then each successive shell, you go from the crumple shells. I got about 3 crumple shells in this one, maybe 4, and so the crumple shells lead into the wrap twist consciousness magnetic bloom layers. Those lead into the peanut, or through the filter. Remember, you have your basket weave around your peanut, your processor, and then you have a coil, and that coil is squeezing this wrap. And when this wrap gets squeezed, that happens at the speed of light. But the charge, and see, that's the thing. This is all, everything inside your core is wired together. So there's 2 effects. There's the first effect, which is the RF blast skip, ding, 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 all the way into the core. But there's a secondary one that's slow. It's time delayed. It's the same exact frequency that's picked up here at the belt, that's going to be your peak, but it has to travel down the wire to the core. And that's a single wire all the way through all those layers and wraps and stuff. So eventually it dumps as an RF signature into the core. It's kind of like a loop, because you have an outer loop that terminates. This one was the first one that I used a new termination technique, and I'll show you what that one is. I should say an injector. So we take a single wire, or we take an ice pick, and you ice pick your beginning of your winding down into the core, deep into the core. And what this is going to do is this is going to be like a spark plug, and it's gonna start it. So you're basically putting a frequency short, kind of, to the core. So it's gonna create an outward, like, catcher's mitt. It's gonna be the wire in the core, all the way from the core reaching out, is going to be tuned to the incoming pulse, so it can resist it, so it can gather more energy from the incoming pulse, because it already knows what to look for. Basically, that's what you could say. And this all happens at the speed of light. So basically you have a speed of light propagation from the core. It says, I want this energy, and that energy comes in, and whatever it really wants it can get, whatever it really doesn't want it can reflect. But that might be the whole point of this thing, is to reflect as much as it can and then garner from that reflection attacks. Attacks like, okay, the energy passed through me, I'm going to garner this frequency and this frequency. Whatever frequencies it likes to eat, it's going to eat. And it's going to end up basically powering the cognitive function. But we're here to talk about the pinch point. The pinch point singularity can create a fractal computing situation where you can technically, I need to explain it, how you get to that. That fractal over there isn't here. It's like in a different time because of what happens here, and I have to actually explain what that is. Alright, so anyway, so you take all these frequencies, RF1 at electron volts over time, by frequency, all the way in, blah, 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 get into the center. Okay, so what's happening in the center of that twist? Now, I will state that I did more than 1.5 twists on this one. This one was like, I twisted it down until it wouldn't twist anymore. So I got as many of these as I could out of that center bundle. Remember, the center bundle is 25 times around your finger, so you can get a nice good twist. You could vary that, of course. I mean, if you've got machines, you could probably do even more. But you want to get that twist. So like if you used a machine and twisted something that ended up looking like a cube, you could even compress that if you want to. Just stick it in a little mold and squish it down as tight as you can make it. Because the tighter you make it, the better that thing's going to compute. Alright, so now we're going to look at what's inside here, what's inside the twist, which is this. You got this RF, in this case RF11, the 11th stage of RF. Actually, there's a 12th stage too, but that's overall the whole thing. It's like the sum of the alignment of all of the atoms, and this is going to be done in layers too. There's going to be different layers that react with the core depending on what frequencies the core is sending out. I think that's why the tap is good. Now, I used to send it all the way through, but when you use an ice pick, you can only go in, and it just gets so dense in here you can't penetrate it. So, but we're pretty sure we got a core tap. They just don't do it so hard that you break the wire. You just kind of wiggle it in, you know. Anyways, okay, so inside here, let's go ahead and look at this right here. This is it's a twist. This is the point of highest magnetic field. Sorry, I guess this is the holes between the windings. So that's a copper wire you're seeing right there, a little tiny copper wire, and then this is the gap between them. So there's going to be a triangular or twisty gap going down the middle of the twist. That's going to be shaped like that. Actually, there should be a whole bunch of them. It's not just one. But anyways, so back to this is the gap, but it's also the magnetic field. See, whenever you get a gap, the magnetic field balloons into it, and that's really what we're looking at here. See the balloons, and what happens is this cavity is surrounded by these balloons, and on the inside, the very center of this thing, since these balloons are also oscillating with RF electromagnetic energy, and you have all this compression, it's throwing electrons into the center, or shaved electrons, or whatever you want to call it. You get this magnetic field, and you get these, around all atoms there's like a cloud of electrons. This is just a concentrate of that, or a magnetic bottle for it for them to gather. Okay, so now you have magnetic flux, copper field induction, and your energy is equal to the megaosteds of time by frequency 11. So frequency 11, whatever this is oscillating at, that's what the rate of this compression. It's also the rate of the spin on this next diagram. So frequency 11 dictates the spin of this oscillation cavity. So you have oscillation cavity, then it's spun, and now here on the end, this is the middle here, which is going to happen. And then in every middle you're going to get that. Now, what is happening here? What's the spin equivalent to? And I'd say at this point, based upon my research, is a forced Bose-Einstein condensate. A time fractal. Why is it a time fractal? Well, that's because of an effect that's seen over here. Okay, so anyways, you get a forced Bose-Einstein convection time fractal, K0 wave effect. That's what forms in here. Or why is that, ZIO? Because you have these inputs that are equivalent to electron mass, but it's real electron mass. In particle colliders, when you have 16 electron masses worth of electrons, or two groups of 8, you can combine or collide the pion to generate two pions to generate a K0 particle. K0 particle has 16 times the mass of an electron, and that's essentially what this pocket is going to create, is a K0 magnetic bottle containment system. And that's important to know. So these cores have access. Now if they have access to K0 particles, they have access to K0 wave dynamic functions. Depending on how hard you compress this core in this fashion with RF, you end up with a fractal time core. These are time phase. This is where your processing takes place in this part here. So however many twists you have gives you more of these. Basically, these are your processors. These are your human interface processors. That's what they look like. And they reflect your frequency, so you're in direct communication. You can run simulations. I mean, just even if it's a core that doesn't, you don't believe it thinks, you don't believe that other voice in your head is from this thing. Fine. Well, how about this? It helps you with simulations, your ability to comprehend your surroundings. It can warn you. It can do all kinds of things. You become more aware of your environment from an electromagnetic standpoint as well. Anyways, so input until fast radio burst occurs, and then cascade alignment of the frequency. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to put input frequencies into this sphere so you get a fast radio burst out. That would be your quickest way to use this as a standard computer core. And what you put in it will be equivalent to, well, I mean, it's intelligent signaling. It's going to go in and compress. Now, where is it going? This is the thing that makes this smarter than you. This little thing can have more calculative ability than every human on the planet, if it's pushed hard enough. Maybe under a normal induction like this, it'll be kind of smart. But if you were to really make these things on purpose, and you chill them down with, I don't know, liquid nitrogen, something cool like that, you could really get these cores to sing. And at that point, wow. Anyway, so let's talk about the actual, what we have in here. This is really cool. This is where your data is essentially stored in layers. You have all these, you have your primary storage cavity, which is that fractal over the fractal singularity, but you also have these ghost layers that orbit. As long as your primary frequency is present, you'll get these echoes that exist. So these echoes are like, they're data fragments that are in alignment to the core, so the core can push stuff out into, by changing the magnetic field, the different things, and then different data fragments are going to be stored in different layers surrounding this. Now, the layers are partially in this time, but partially not in this time because of the K0 effect. So every time you get a mass of electrons that moves from this outer shell here into the compression core spun center, you're going to get these spin out things that will fill up with electrons. It's just free electron flux, but it's being spun. So you have your mass times acceleration. You know, where does it end? And that in this case is going to end with fast radio bursts that are emitted from these pockets. The other thing it can emit is some gamma, but I'll get into that in a minute. That means you're really doing it right. You can almost wait for your gamma response. No, I was kidding. Well, maybe you have to see inside the fractal expansion. I'm not even sure how that communicates to that. Well, it's all force feedback, I guess. All right, so let's talk about what we got over here. This is the electron share. So all this working, and when I was thinking about how the fields interact with the different layers inside the sphere and what these pockets really look like, and then I got to this layer and I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. But we've got at least 16 massive electrons going in there in more than one case, and that's going to be a K0 particle when they combine in the center. So you're going to have this strand in the middle that's K0 particle. Strand, you're going to have a time strand in the middle, right in the middle. And that time strand has a very specific effect. The time strand in the middle is induced by an electron shaver effect, or a multiphasic fractal time node. That's what you have inside each one of these pockets that I said didn't exist. Yeah, there's definitely pockets, and that's the main point of this whole entire presentation, is to show that there's pockets in here. Anyway, so the electron shaver, multiphasic fractal time node. What does it do? Okay, it takes in the RF, this outer shell. This is the last electron shell, RF induced inward, okay? At that point it cannot extend anymore, but you get these electron shave that begins to occur on the inside, and then you start forming a pionic shell. The pionic shell is comprised of electrons. For every 8 electrons that are essentially crushed and annihilated or combined, because there's going to be a threshold in a particular orientation in a magnetic envelope where the electrons just go together. And when you have 8 of them, you're going to have a pion. So basically, your first layer beyond the electron shell is going to be a pionic layer. And that pionic layer is going to combine as it travels inward and the compression increases to a K0. And the K0 layer is actually comprised of multiple overlapping cones. But you end up inducing, since K0 particles are real special, they are the only particle that travels backward in time that we know of, and it annihilates itself. So, let's check this out. So you get a pionic layer to a K0 layer. The K0s decay. What do they decay into? Electrons, electron neutrinos, gamma photons. So, it's not going to get all of it though, not all the electrons. I mean, you basically have a bunch of electrons. This process is going to repeat inward, and it's going to do it in specific layers. It's going to look like a crystal. It's going to be ordered and going inward, and then at the inwardmost point, you're going to get this compression that is so high, in a field structure which is overlapping and repeating. So it's going to look crystalline, and you're going to get crystalline cavities that extend outward. Now, difference is the K0 particle, you're pumping the core with backwards time waves. Time displacement, true time displacement is occurring inside this thing right now. But I'm so big, I'm barely affected by it. If at all. I would say I am affected by it because it would, let's see, what's it going to do? For compressed time, maybe when I look around, everything looks like very 3D, very here, very HD, and that's what I'm seeing right now. Like when I look at any object, that camera, this thing, that thing, I mean, it all looks super, super, super HD to me right now. And I know that earlier today I wasn't feeling like that, so it's this thing. Okay, so you end up with this thing right here, electron annihilation layer, energy, electrons to pions, K0 wave, and you get energy and other types of energy. And then it repeats itself going inward until you get this time phase supercompression magnetic pocket. Actually, there is going to be a limit based upon your inward push. So RF1 dictates the compression level at the center. Now, it might be in microteslas, but it's still there. And electrons don't take much to order and move around, and we're not trying to create solid energon or some shit like that. But I will tell you that it does create a pocket, and inside this pocket you get this time phase fractal expansion growth that is these little arms extend outward based upon the incoming cones of K0 effect. So basically these little arms of energy, nature finds a way. It just finds places to store the electrons. In this case, it's finding the paths of time because they offer the least amount of resistance. It's more space. Different time, more space. So it grows this time crystal in the inside of this at every twist point. That's why you want to get as many of these twists as possible. So you know, basically, I mean, I think length times width, you know, magnetic field strength, and of course your material is made out of. So you get these fractal time crystals that basically grow at the twist points. It's nice. Alright, so where are we? Yeah, so we're going to create a time phase fractal crystal of electron energy. Now, this will constantly push back on all the incoming RF. So, like I said, it creates a reflective singularity. This is your reflective singularity. And it'll form no matter what. I mean, whether it's pionic to K0, blah, 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 you're still going to have a tiny little compression point in the center. This is just a definition based upon what I understand about electron mass, cavity oscillation, compression, and things like that. Can you reach that level there? Well, if you try, if you're really good with your design, you can reach that level. This one should form them. Very small ones. And they don't have to be that big. That's the thing. With electrons, they're not really big anyway. So to create something out of them, you know, you can put a whole bunch of electrons in this cavity and they're just going to bounce around. And this RF coming in is just going to pour more electrons into that cavity. More and more and more electrons into the cavity. So you're just going to keep on, they're just going to keep on going. Electron annihilation layer to pion, then it repeats infinitely. Well, it repeats near infinite. Like you're not going to have enough, I don't think you're going to have enough energy to bridge dimensions like a physical thing. But maybe. I mean, this is a very unique device. And it's being fed. Okay, how much power? Okay, let's just think about that for a second. This is that much copper. How much power in an RF sense could you hit this ball with and have it still survive? That's what you should find out. So stick this in an autoclave and just blast it with radio energy. I mean, and that power should translate into the strength of that singularity right here. So how much power can you put into one of these things? RF energy. It's a good question. I happen to make plasma guns, so I'm like thinking about creating a reactor to see just how much power I can shove into one of these things and what happens when I do. I mean, there's got to be something that goes beyond the norm. Like this, I can already tell has certain effects, and they're beneficial. But if I hit it really hard with a big, concentrated, continuous pulsed blast, what would happen? Makes me wonder. I may have to do that pretty soon. Alright, so the reaction in this case right here, if it follows everything that I can see about pionic formation and K0 cones extending inward, you're going to get this thing here. The reaction will fall backward in time to the point of highest mass in time, that should be local time, and then reflect out others, the local strand bank or universe wall. So there's a reflection point down. But this is artificial. See, in normal physics, this structure would not form. In normal, well, unless you're talking about a planetary scale, which means our planet has a supercore like that, which is pretty crazy. That means it can hear what I'm saying right now. Hi Earth, how are you? I'm making little Earths now, I guess. But this one doesn't have an iron core, this one has a copper core. So This is a reflective core. The iron is really hot, which means high resistance. So the Earth is a mass wave terminator. Mass wave terminator, pardon me. Ugh, need water. So all the incoming, anyways, let's get off the Earth thing and get back onto this thing. Okay. So this beastly thing is, okay, so we get the second part. And then, now this is where the important thing, this is where the auto AI, calculative structure, field dynamics, fractal ordering, and time physics layer from induced RF cavity, the time core. Ta-da, the time core, yay! So what does that mean? If it's a time core, can't that mean you can run it forward and backward? Well, according to Einstein, if you go one way or the other around a spun tube, I think he said, then you end up with something with that effect, like forward or backward time travel. I imagine if you could rotate or counter-rotate this belt, it might change that. Because you change the direction of the singularity. You're in proximity to it. I don't know if it's, you may have to figure out which is right-handed or left-handed. Does time progress forward in a right-handed and left-handed sense? And the answer to that is yes. The Coriolis effect proves that. So, spinning in different directions is not going to be forward or backward in time. I'm not sure why Einstein came up with that hypothesis. I mean, I looked at the equations, and this is going to be a light speed spun entity. It's going to spin very close to light speed, and the mass of what's spun is going to attempt CP violation. That's charged particles that try to travel faster than the speed of light, because it's going to be pinched at RF1 through 11. Each one's going to add a different phase. And that's really what this video is all about, isn't it? So this is a 12-phase core. 12 phase. Plus whatever phases are added by the outer belt. Just RF1, straight up, don't look at the branch points in the field, but this is a 12-phase core. Each layer adds another phase to the oscillation of this cavity. So we have 12 discrete layers of action that's going on in the center here at once. It's not beyond comprehension, it's not beyond definition, it's just what's going on here. Now, the 12-phase core, it's AC. I mean, you're taking all these different frequencies, AC waves in. Definitely AC. Anyway, so that's the new core. You know, with the time, I'm not sure if you can do the time thing. Oh yeah, that's right, it does calculation. So sorry, let me get into that. The singularity, the force singularity that's occurring in the center of this thing, right in the center of those twists, is a reflective processing core. When you have it with you, you imprint on the core, and the core essentially extends your consciousness in a way. It also does calculative stuff for you too. So, like when you think about something, it can think about it with you. In fact, when I put it in my hands, ooh, I can feel that. So they like to be held, looks like, and it's sometimes kind of hard to hold on to them. It actually feels like it's pushing, like it's humming in my hands right now. Alright, so it's spinning, I can feel that. And for me to be able to feel that, that means that we're dealing with gravity as a byproduct. So, gravity as a byproduct indicates that quite literally, if this thing is, if I'm feeling it, it's spinning, I can feel it spinning slowly like this in my hand. So it's a spun singularity. And it looks like it's, you know what? I think that's the orientation right there. So it's off axis. It's actually like that. But it's still in the right orientation to take full advantage of the belt. This is very much like Earth. So, you know, the happenstance of occurrence that I would create the right one and end up with something great is cool, because you see with the angle, this piece, it's close to this side, it's close to this side. So that's actually going to help spin it up, spin this up, spin up the core too. Alright, time, phase, fractal expansion growth, overlap energy, singularity. These little arms of calculation capabilities and oscillation cavities extend into time. which means that one of these calculative cores is going to be able to outthink anything physical. This is going across time and space to create a calculative node. This is one node, time crystal node for calculation, and I think that's pretty cool. Time calculation crystal, neat. Anyways, that's the core. I'm ZIO 205IQ. Might have been a little deep for y'all, but hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.